morning everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, the body language mistakes to avoid when you're public speaking. And this applies both to face-to-face presentation skills or virtual presentation skills, as I'm doing today. Body language mistakes to avoid that creep into the way we conduct our presentations that, unbeknown to us, are diluting or detracting from our ability to engage, to inspire, and to be effective in our virtual presentations in our face-to-face public speaking. Peter Dew's my name. I'm a public speaking trainer and coach, and my passion is to help people like yourselves be more confident, more effective, and more influential every time you stand up, present virtually, do a conference presentation, so you can have the impact that you want to. So welcome. Simple rules I go through all the time with each of my webinars. Ask questions as we go. You can type them in the chat box. Take notes. I do record these webinars, so should I gloss over something that you want to review, send an email to Christine or myself, and we will send you a copy of the video recording. And think and apply to your own personal circumstances. Is there something I'm going to talk about that you do that, if you were to eliminate or remove, would just elevate your public speaking just that little bit? Have you got something distracting that you do that you're maybe a little bit unaware of? The power of continuing education, the power of a webinar like this, is not just your attending, rather what you do after. So this is the thinking and then the applying what you've learned, what you've observed, to your own personal circumstances. Common mistakes. Poor posture. We've seen this at meetings where people lean on benches, elbows on benches. We see people on stage leaning on the lectern. It really does detract from your ability to be an effective communicator and an effective presenter or public speaker. I do a little exercise where we have a group of people around the table, and this comes from Michael Grinder, the Nonverbal Communication skills expert. And we do this little exercise where everyone just puts their elbows on the table or their hands on the table, and they all say, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be here. Then I get them to remove their hands and then gesture at the same time. I'm excited to be here. And what the whole room notices is the increase in energy, intensity, volume, and enthusiasm that comes with a non-verbal gesture that associates, amplifies what you're saying. Elbows on the desk, hands on the desk, I'm excited to be here, just doesn't come through that quickly, that effectively. So are you doing any poor posture things when you speak from a non-verbal communication? That's the slouching, the leaning on lecterns. Some people hold the lectern and their knuckles go white. We call this white knuckle fever. And each of these will reduce your ability to look confident, to look credible, and to have impact with your audience. Your nonverbal communication not being in sync with the words that you're saying. We call this the dance of communication. You come across as not being interested, as being bored, because your nonverbal communication doesn't echo that enthusiasm, that commitment, that passion for your clients, for those of you on this webinar. And it's almost like, it's 9:05, I've got somewhere else I need to be, I'm looking forward to my morning coffee, and my nonverbal communication is not in sync with my role today, which is to inspire you, to help you, to educate you as you move forward. May even come across as you're a little bit evasive, a little bit away from the point, maybe lying. We see politicians where sometimes their nonverbal communication kind of indicates that they're not really telling the truth. And as I said, there's better things I could be doing than speaking to you. You must not let your body language distract or take away from your message, your purpose in running a seminar, in running a workshop, in running this presentation. Fidgeting. There's all those types of fidgeting that we do. And the person who does some really quite intricate gymnastics with that pen, this isn't a clicker, but there is that clicker pen that goes up and down, click, 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 really annoying. The other one, of course, hey, look at me, I'm married, look at my wedding ring, or even other jewelry that you play with. I do wear a necklace, and you may not be able to see that, but then people play with their necklace, their earrings, their bangles, their watches. I wear glasses, not so much when I'm speaking face to face, only when I'm computing or reading, and you see the people that take off their glasses and do something like this. I teach people to present largely without notes, so I myself am running this webinar without the use of notes. But should you have notes, and I'm not saying don't have notes, so I've got a little cheat sheet here. People then do gymnastics with their notes while they're not reading them. And so as they're speaking, they might refer to them, and then what they do in the meantime is they almost are folding it into some origami, making some intricate little box or swan is going to pop out of this piece of paper. What fidgeting does is it dilutes your message. It's what we call visual noise. Some people hate the sound of a mobile phone ringing in the background, or if there's a construction worker at the building next door and they've got the jackhammer going, or the constant movement of traffic. The auditory learners, those who learn mostly by listening, predominantly by sound, they'll be distracted by that noise pollution. But the fidgeting that bears no relation, the knuckle cracking, the rubbing the hands, that bears no relation to the words coming out of your mouth, that is visual pollution and is equally as distracting as the noise pollution to the visual learner. So remove any distractions. If you don't need them, don't bring it up. If you don't need your pen, don't bring it up. Giving no physical feedback or facial expressions at all. So this is the deadpan, the straight face, and sometimes there is that deadpan humor where the comedian just does not laugh, does not smile, is very unanimated and just comes on stage. That is an art, the deadpan comedian, but as a speaker, your emotions, your passion, your facial expressions must come through equally. Otherwise, you may not be seen as congruent with the message coming out of your mouth. I did a one-day workshop the other day. It was quite interesting. 4th of February to a corporate organisation in Perth, and their requirement was that I wear the mask because of COVID. Now, the funny thing is, I do smile a lot when I speak, and I try and put a little bit of humour, not that I'm funny, and I noticed that no one could tell that I was smiling. So I had to physically let them know, hey, by the way, I'm smiling. And then over time they realised when I was smiling, they could see it in my eyes. But the mask does detract from our ability to engage and communicate from a non-verbal perspective, and that's just one of the things we need to deal with. So you need to do other things to, if you're presenting with a mask or attending a meeting with masks on, you need to make sure that other things are amplified to compensate for that lack of smile, that lack of facial expression that may be hidden by the mask. So common mistake number 3 is that deadpan expression where you give nothing away. Maybe in a negotiation, similar to a game of poker, the deadpan face, not giving anything away, is important. But generally with public speaking and presentation skills, the face needs to give away your enthusiasm, your passion, your congruence with your message. No eye contact. Really bad mistake in job interviews. Not making eye contact with your interview panel. Bad mistake with virtual presentations. I have my camera on a stand above eye level, and I have a man's face with a tie with his thumbs up. And I make eye contact with that gentleman quite often. I call him Bill, and Bill's giving me encouragement because it's really lonely sort of speaking to yourself with people out in the virtual world. And I need that encouragement from Bill, but he reminds me also to make eye contact with the camera. When I'm doing face-to-face presentations, I will pick out someone in the room and I'll speak to them for that 4 to 5 seconds. Then I'll pick another person in the room, maybe in the middle this time, and I'll speak to them for 4 to 5 seconds. Then I'll go down the back corner of the room, and I'll pick out a face and I'll speak to that person for 4 to 5 seconds. Real eye contact matters. Not making eye contact may be seen as evasive, and once again a little bit dishonest or untrustworthy. If you think of the used car salesperson, now I don't want to cast a bad name on all car salesmen. I have brought a car recently from a great salesperson, no pressure, didn't sort of hassle me at all, and got the car I wanted. But the car salesman that looks up at you, up at the roof, and says, well, it's a really good car, and he looks down to the floor, trust me, it's only had one owner, then looks at the wall, good service history, I promise I wouldn't sell you a lemon. That lack of eye contact kind of gives the impression that I may be hiding something, that I'm avoiding making eye contact with you. Now, I understand that at times when we're trying to think, we need to go to the roof to try and recall, or we go to the floor to try and recall. My recommendation was, as much as possible, make eye contact with your audiences as you speak. Virtual world, your audience is down the camera. Bad handshakes. I thought I'd leave this slide in. During COVID times, it is less appropriate to handshake. But with the sanitization and the realization that 95% of COVID is spread via aerosol, so the sneezing and the coughing, and only about 5% by surfaces, by touch, the handshake isn't the demon we thought it was. But I still reduce my handshakes, and we do the elbow bumps. But when the handshake returns, one of the mistakes I see is that bad handshake. There's the handshake where the other person grasps your hand and squeezes it to death. The other hand where one person offers the limp fish, or you offer your handshake and the person gives you the limp fish, the limp handshake. And then there's the other person who takes the handshake and determines that they're going to be the dominant person as they turn your hand over and their hand sits on top. A simple rule with handshakes is I like to mirror and match. Match the level of tightness, A soft handshake, I will match and give the soft handshake. A harder, firmer handshake, I will do match and do a firmer handshake. The handshake that's slightly down, I will come in slightly down so that I match and mirror the handshake that I'm offered. I don't crunch. I don't do the limp fish handshake. Another mistake is mismatched verbal or non-verbal messages. And I spoke about the importance of the dance of communication and being in sync with what you're saying. So some people have a passive voice or that monotone voice. And for example, I put the hands on the desk and I'm excited to be here. But you can just imagine the person who says, yeah, thanks for inviting me today. I'm really pleased and thrilled to be here today, and I'm very, very excited. In fact, this is the highlight of my week. My non-verbal communication in my voice is not congruent with what I'm saying. On stage, using the same message, if I step back as I say, I'm really pleased to be here. So everyone, I'm really pleased to be here. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm walking away from you. In actual fact, a more appropriate and more congruent non-verbal communication would be to walk towards the audience. So thanks for inviting me. I'm really pleased to be here. We're going to have a great time and I've got lots of information I want to share with you. Let's get started. Now, bearing in mind the depth of the stage matters, in moving forward, I would not want to be in the front row's personal space. I'd want to move towards them, but still give them, the front row, sufficient space to feel comfortable and me not invading their personal space. So if it's a narrow stage, a narrow platform, the moving back or moving forward may be difficult because you're constrained by the depth of the stage. But if you have got sufficient room, I would generally start in the middle of the stage, move forward to say I'm really excited to be here. Now, if I need to dilute something, look, I don't think that is really such a big issue. Then I might move back, thus diluting, sort of limiting the importance of the point I'm just discussing. And that's sometimes a way of diffusing some of the tough stuff just by stepping back. I'm just diluting it a little bit. Generally, I spend most of my time in the middle, in the center of the stage, and I can move forward to really emphasize something. And the low energy, I need to bring energy to the stage. I need to bring energy to the virtual presentation. I need to bring more energy to the virtual presentation than I need to with the face-to-face presentation. An audience of 20 people, so a workshop, an audience of 500 people, I need to bring more energy to the 500 people than I do to the 20 people. Make sure your energy, your voice, your level of excitement and passion matches the message you're sharing with people today. If you are downsizing, there's going to be some redundancies, there's going to be some reconfiguration, then maybe don't come across too excited. If you're a HR manager talking about a difficult change management process, you may need to be a little bit more circumflex, a little bit more within yourself and withhold some of that high energy. Failing to smile. I mentioned the face mask. I had to let people know that I was smiling. Smiling is really important. Smiling for me as a speaker, for you as a speaker, smiling releases endorphins and serotonin. They're the good chemicals. They're the happy chemicals from the brain. releases them to the brain. You get a little bit more energized. If you get your audience to smile as well, then all of a sudden you've released a bit of energy, some endorphins and some serotonin into your audience's brains, and they'll be a little bit more energized. So smiling is a great thing to do when public speaking. I'm not talking about stand-up comedy. Smiling is really important, and laughter is important in stand-up comedy. Smiling and laughter is important in public speaking. You just don't do it all the time. Being too serious, being monotone, being too passive may lose that important connection with your audience because they can see you're not enjoying what you're saying. You're not congruent and aligned non-verbally. Eye rolling. Someone asks you a question. Where we go? Don't they listen? Aren't they listening? Oh, not again. Stupid question. That eye rolling, the facial expressions. There's no stupid questions. When I present, I take every question and elevate it as a great question. And there are those questions I don't know the answer, that I'll take on notice, find out, and I'll get back to the person. Non-verbal communication is so important, and bad non-verbal communication can be so destructive. There's a case in the Melville City Council in Western Australia where negative body language was banned, and they had to create a code of conduct, and to breach that code of conduct would result in a financial fine. This is elected members of local government, the city of Melville. The humph, the rolling the eyes, the shrugging of shoulders, the turning the back on someone. I find this extreme, that a group of elected leaders for the city of Melville, their non-verbal communication is so bad that they need to prepare a code of conduct and impose penalties for breach of that code of conduct. That common sense of the way we need to behave, the way we need to interact with our audience in a non-verbal communication perspective. Please avoid these bad habits, these non-verbal communication bad habits that will really dilute and detract from your ability to have credibility, to sell yourself, to sell your idea in a workshop, in a seminar, in a job interview. Avoid crossing arms, those defensive stances. This one behind my back, this is called the Sergeant Major, and as I march across the stage, it's my way or the highway. The other one is hips on shoulders, seen as a little bit closed, a little bit aggressive. So trying to avoid those gestures. My resting position is just parallel to the ground, slightly in front of me, ready to gesture when I need to. When I finish with the gesture, I just come back to that resting position. And while I'm in this resting position, I'm not cracking my knuckles. I'm not playing with my ring. I'm not getting the genie out of the bottle. Just nice resting position. A great mentor for you all to watch. What do people do with their hands when they're not gesturing? Watch the weather presenters. They talk about a cyclone up in the northwest. Perth's going to be 35 degrees, and then they bring their hands back together and they just rest them. That's a pretty good range of non-verbal communication mistakes. So in summary, what's your posture? I like to stand up when I present, even virtually, because my diaphragm is fully open. I can breathe, I can project my voice, and I can amplify my gestures. Sitting down to run a webinar, my diaphragm is more constrained, my gestures are smaller, less visible than they are now. Make sure your body language is in sync with your message. Avoid the fidgeting, the ring twiddles, the pens, the gymnastics. Don't do deadpan unless you're doing deadpan comedy. Make sure you have eye contact down the barrel. Bad handshakes. Mismatched nonverbal communication and your message, where what you're saying and what your body says are not the same thing. Failing to smile. The importance of eye contact, and try and avoid some of those defensive or sometimes aggressive stances while you are presenting. What have I got coming up? Upcoming webinars set well in advance. 7 ways to prime your audience. What do you do to get your audience ready before they walk into your training room? Before they come to your conference presentation? What do you do to get them salivating in anticipation before they walk in the room? 7 ways to get your presentation started. This is the beginning. Really important to start strong. And simple guidelines to ensure a Q&A session. So you've finished your presentation, you're stepping back from your presentation, and now you've got those questions coming from the audience. Those difficult questions, those contentious questions, those left field questions. How do you deal with them? They're the dates, they're all on the website. Workshops, I'm now running online workshops. How to negotiate saying no, being run by my wife, 28th of March. Effective public speaking skills, taking them to the next level, 30th of March, I'm running that. And thinking and speaking off the cuff. This is question and answer, this is job interviews, this is how do you give a project update, this is meeting where you're asked to give your idea, your opinion with no time to prepare, starting on the 29th of April. Couple of face-to-face workshops, Perth, winning presentation skills, Karatha, thinking and speaking off the cuff. If you know any colleagues who would be interested, please forward this information on to them. You know how to contact me. If you need further information on what I've shared with you today, I mentioned Michael Grinder. If you want me to connect or give you some more resources that Michael provides, I'm happy to do that with you. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Just let me know that you participated in this webinar, and there's our website as well. Don't let poor nonverbal communication detract whitehand your ability to present effectively, your credibility as a conference speaker, or your suitability for a job application. Don't let poor nonverbal communication reduce your ability to have impact. This is Peter Dew, wishing you well on your public speaking journey.